This is LBC with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
It is 12:34 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Would you like me to open the LBC Advent Calendar? I'm going to. Simon Marks is here, of course. He is lurking behind the door. But I was just running through those historical fiction authors that I loved the most a minute ago and referencing the chap in the Daunt Books article who recommended two authors right on the nose. If you like C.J. Sampson, then you will love Laura Shepherd Robinson and Andrew Taylor. But there's another one I would put on that list. And I was racking my brains to remember who it was. Barbara knew. She said, James, if you like those books, you'd love S.W. Perry. I love S.W. Perry's books. It's a sort of Mark series. The Angels Mark, the Serpents Mark, the Heretics Mark. They're brilliant, brilliant books. And his more recent one, actually, fasts forward a couple of centuries. It's set in wartime Berlin Duet, which is actually on my bedside table at this moment, waiting for the Christmas break. But what I didn't know until he came to one of my book signings in Stratford-upon-Avon is that S.W. Perry is actually a former LBC face. He worked here as a broadcast journalist many moons ago and went by the name Steve Wood. And Simon Marks, at the time, I think, was probably reading the news on Clive Bull's overnight programme.
Yeah, that's extraordinary.
Isn't it?
Because I hadn't thought of the name Steve Wood for a while, and I think you have to go all the way back to the late 70s when LBC was in basement offices off of Fleet Street, which was the first time I ever did any work at LBC. And Steve Wood, if I recall correctly, was one of the principal hosts of an afternoon news programme. It was an 8-hour rolling news programme called LBC Reports. And if it is the same Steve Wood, and I presume it is...
I think it is.
That is extraordinary. Clive would definitely have memories of that, probably better than mine, given his association.
All roads lead
was
to
more
LBC.
Full-time than mine.
Of
but
course.
yeah, absolutely extraordinary.
And they're brilliant books.
Perry,
S.W. Perry, there you go.
Check it out.
Stick it on your Christmas
Absolutely.
list. Where do we begin? So I've got written down in no particular order, Plaques, which I've kind of covered, Kennedy Centre, which I kind of haven't, and then the speech last night.
Well, the speech, 18 minutes, because he was told he had to come in under 20 minutes, because otherwise the networks were going to basically switch him off. When presidents of the United States announce they're going to do a primetime address, it usually means they've got something enormous to announce or something to address. You do it after the 9/11s, you do it when you've decided to commit troops to Iraq, and indeed there were predictions that he was going to announce that the country was at war with Venezuela. Tucker Carlson said that he had it on good authority that was going to be embedded in the speech.
Yeah.
Of course, what the speech was really about, as these things invariably are efforts at distraction. He wanted to try and move away from the absolutely shameful, disgraceful comments that he made, not just on Truth Social, but in person.
Doubled down,
about the Rhiners when he doubled down. But also, it was designed to be a moment when he would say to the American public, look, I feel your pain about the economy as we head into Christmas. I just want to assure you I understand your concerns about prices. I'm addressing it. I'm hearing what you're saying. And this is the second time. The first time was at a rally in Pennsylvania about 10 days ago when he proved completely incapable of actually getting those words out. So he keeps insisting prices are falling when they are not.
Yeah.
And that's not opinion. You can go to the US Department of Agriculture website, the government's own website, the Bureau of Labour Statistics as well. You can see that prices are rising faster than the rate of inflation in the United States, pretty much across the board. 31% of the public currently say they approve of his handling of the economy. We are, as you know, heading into a midterm election year, which will be a referendum on his presidency, because that's what the White House says they want it to be. They say they're going to put him out there. He's going to be campaigning like it was 2024 all over again, because they believe that he still has the secret sauce to mobilise the Make America Great Again faithful. But if he doesn't find a way of expressing some degree of understanding about what the average Joe is facing in terms of the economy, and instead keeps saying, well, 401, the stock market's booming, so everybody's 401ks are going through the roof. Well, it is true. I mean, I'm one of the privileged to have a 401k retirement account, and it's not only recovered all the money that it lost, it's significantly up on the year. But the vast majority of people in the United States don't have them. And even if you've got one, you can't access the money till you're 59 and a half. So if you're a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old going to the supermarket this weekend, that money in your 401k is doing nothing for you as you pay for the Christmas dinner.
Of which the prices on the shelves will be higher.
Yes.
Because there's two lies, really. There's the one about things coming down when they're not, but also the lie about inflation being the worst in 48 years when he took office, when, again, it's not an opinion, it's counting.
Correct.
It simply wasn't.
Absolutely. But, I mean, nothing that he said in that speech. I mean, I think you've seen there's this list of 50 falsehoods.
Daily
that
Mirror
told,
did a good job.
Once every 24 seconds,
yeah,
right?
something like that.
I mean,
how do you even make sense of this?
But even if you look even at the point where he's addressing the economy, he claims that Biden and the Democrats looted the Treasury of billions of dollars. And that's what forced, in some fashion, he says, prices up. But as a viewer sitting at home, you're sitting there thinking, wait a minute, they looted the Treasury of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Where's the criminal investigation into that? But
it just says anything, really.
Absolutely.
I mean, speaking of saying anything, some of it just makes you go, it must be me. I must be missing something. I know he's spoken previously about 13,099 convicted murderers, which no one could find any evidence for. He claimed yesterday they were drug dealers. This is about the people coming from prisons and jails, mental institutions and insane asylums. So there's no evidence to suggest a high number of people entering the US between 2021 and 2024 either had a criminal record or had been detained on mental health grounds. I don't know whether I've asked you this before, but do you think he's got a mental block when he hears the word asylum? He thinks about Arkham Asylum, or he thinks about mental asylums?
I mean, yes, I think it's possible. I mean,
there's nothing else makes sense.
I mean, well, what does make sense, and I think we've really seen this in the last 3 weeks particularly, is that he is extremely bigoted, and I think it's possible to argue that he's a virulent racist. I mean, if you look at the things that he has been saying about Somalis, and again he rounded on them in this speech, it is rooted in fiction about the role that the Somali community plays in Minnesota. Many members of the Somali community, more than 60,000 of them, legally present in Minneapolis, St. Paul and surrounding towns and cities, are playing substantial roles as doctors, as surgeons, as lawyers, as real estate agents. I mean, they are across the board contributing to society and paying taxes. And yet we're now at the point where not only are the doors of the country closed to everyone seeking refuge or asylum other than white Afrikaners from South Africa, but he's also now talking about beginning the process of denaturalizing American citizens. Hundreds and hundreds of them that they want to denaturalize every single month in a bid to engage in remigration. In other words, literally taking passports away from people. And he says that all of these people that have become naturalized citizens, many of them were criminals and they fraudulently got their US. There's no evidence for it any more than there is evidence that the vast majority of Somalis in Minnesota, I think they said more than half of them that were living in Minnesota on visas had lied in their visa applications. They have no possible way of knowing that, and if that's the case, why were they granted visas in the first place?
Is there a change in tone or tactic? The lies are so obvious now, whereas before there was always wiggle room. There was always, if not quite plausible deniability, then, you'd get Kellyanne Conway coming out describing lies as alternative facts and it would work. But this is, I mean, the only phrase I can think of is this is just utterly barefaced.
I think there has been a real change in tone over the last month. I think it's been noticeable. I think it's been marked by statements similar to those that he made, for example, there's nothing quite like it, like about the Rhiners, but, all sorts of paroxysms of fury, and bile that we weren't seeing before. I suspect that's connected to the fact that he sees his approval rating sinking. He's down, I think, in the latest Reuters Ipsos poll to 39% across the board, 31% on the issue of the economy.
Yeah.
On the issue of lies, by the way, if you look at the numbers regarding Venezuela and the claims that he makes about every speedboat that they've blown out of the water, and there's been more than 20 of them, with more than 100 people at this point killed, he says that every speedboat they blow out of the water saves 25,000 lives in America because of the drugs that they were allegedly carrying to American shores. Yeah. He claimed last week that over 250,000 American lives had already been saved as a result of the actions that he's been taking towards Venezuela. If you look at the numbers, over the last year, how many Americans do you think have died as a result of drug overdoses? 82,500.
Right.
So where we get this number that 200,000 American lives have been saved is absolutely
pie in the sky.
Completely
plucked out of the ether.
Plucked from the air.
Good Lord. I've seen one good suggestion as to some of the reasoning behind the Venezuela rhetoric from Asha Rangappa, you know, the former FBI. I keep saying this, but no one is connecting the dots. The war, potential war, because, as you say, a couple of days ago, people really thought this was coming in the announcement, is to satisfy the legal preconditions for mass removal, domestically, of Latinos. So suddenly a lot of people are going to be Venezuelan for the purposes of removal or remigration. This knits together two of the points you've made, and she describes it as 100% Stephen Miller. So if they do make some sort of military incursion into Venezuela, then they can start deporting people that they say are Venezuelan.
Well, and there are many Venezuelans.
And actual Venezuelans.
I was actually in Florida several weeks ago in Doral, which is the city that nestles right alongside Miami, where the Trump National Golf Club is located and where next year Trump will be hosting the G20 summit. Doral has the largest presence per capita of Venezuelan exiles, people that are absolutely vehemently opposed to the government of President Nicolas Maduro, that got as much of their money and their possessions out of the country as they possibly could, have parked themselves in Florida and are waiting for what they consider the glorious moment when the Venezuelan government is toppled and they get a chance to go back. I actually interviewed the mayor of Doral while I was there, a Republican supportive of President Donald Trump, very concerned about the possibility that ICE and the Border Patrol were about to show up in that community and start rounding up Venezuelans. So pretty soon, because of the concentration of that community, particularly in South Florida, pretty soon he's got the potential of having real problems with some of his own supporters, with elected lawmakers and mayors from his own political party who are saying, well, I don't want that happening in my community. I mean, you know, these people are waiting here for the chance to go back to Venezuela. They're not waiting to be chucked out and forced back to Venezuela, where many of them would find themselves potentially in grave difficulty at the hands of the Maduro regime. So there are real potential problems coming, as undoubtedly Stephen Miller makes plans in 2026, encouraged by President Donald Trump, to pick up the pace of mass deportations.
And perhaps one of the best illustrations of the barefacedness of it all is the gasoline claims. I mean, again, not an opinion, just counting. He says he said gasoline is now under $2.50 a gallon, and in much of the country, by the way, in some states, it just hit $1.99 a gallon. And all you have to do, they've got is it the same in the States as here? They've got the bloody great signs outside gas stations. You can literally drive past and see how much it is.
So I actually looked this up yesterday because I've been irked by this claim that gas is $1.98, because I can assure you we are absolutely not paying $1.98 in Washington, D.C. And can you find some gas stations in various parts of America where, in a massive giveaway, some of the big box stores have reduced the price to $1.98, $1.99 in order to get you in, because they're going to sting you when you buy the washing machine. Yeah, there's a handful of gas stations doing that, but this notion that the price of petrol has come down to $1.99 a gallon, you know, and that's easy to find, is completely specious.
We're going to run out of time. Any predictions for next year? I think that sums it up, really, doesn't it? Was our microphone good enough to pick up that sound? Thank you very much.
The Democrats are going to fight a war with themselves for the heart and soul of the party, and I think it's very difficult to predict which way that is going to come out. The midterm elections, which are due to take place on November the 3rd next year, are, I think, unlikely currently to be held on time in an entirely free and fair fashion. Wow. They may be held on time with all sorts of jiggery-pokery taking place behind the scenes. You may see more troops on the streets of Democrat cities across the country. You may see, more Democrats and their leading officials being targeted with potential criminal investigation and prosecution. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of questionable stuff that goes on the election campaign trail. And if things, look, one thing that didn't catch much attention this week was in a throwaway line. He was doing a end-of-year reception at the White House, and Miriam Adelson, his big money donor, was there, and she was publicly egging him on to go for another term in office, and said she had just had a chat with Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer, who had presented Trump with a book all about ways in which you can circumvent the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution and run for a second term. And this crowd started chanting 4 more years, 4 more years. Lord. And we go through this cycle of him wanting a third term, then accepting that the Constitution says he can't have one, so I guess I'm not going to be able to run. But there was the money. Literally, she is the money standing there saying to him, if you do it, I'll give you the cash.
I'm here.
And I think that was a pretty big moment.
Watch this space. I don't think you've been wrong yet. But that's
no, I have been wrong. But
that's for
and will be again.
That's for the edit tape. I think the sigh said it all, even if the words didn't. Simon, thank you. Lots of
Cheers,
gratitude coming in from our listeners for the work that you've done throughout this year, and we'll continue. Well, for as long as you can.
Yes.
We'll continue to do next year, and nearly there for the 401k, 59
Absolutely.
and a half.
I'm past that now.
Yeah,
it was a banner year.
It's 12:51.